They say some bonds are unbreakable. The love between a mother and a daughter, a fortress against the world. But what happens when the enemy comes from within? When the lines of loyalty blur and a forbidden desire ignites where it shouldn't? In the quiet American suburbs, behind perfectly manicured lawns and picket fences, a storm is brewing. A storm of attraction, of hearts torn in two, and a betrayal that will shatter a family. This is a story of Susan and Mia, a mother and daughter whose lives take a devastating turn with the arrival of Mark. A man who was meant to bring them closer, but instead drove a wedge deeper than they could ever imagine. Get ready to witness a tale of love, deceit, and the ultimate test of family bonds right here in the heartland of America. Before we dive into this emotional roller coaster, tell us in the comments below where you're watching from, be it your state, city, or country. We love connecting with our global audience. Now let's begin. The perfect beginning. In the quiet, sun-drenched suburbs of Connecticut, on a street lined with perfectly manicured lawns, lived Susan and her daughter Mia. Their home, a charming two-story house with a porch swing, was a sanctuary of laughter, warmth, and the simple, unbreakable bond between a mother and her child. Susan, in her late 40s, had a resilient spirit and a smile that could light up the room. A smile that had been a little dimmer since her divorce 5 years ago. Mia, 17, and radiating with youthful energy, was her mother's best friend, her confidant, and her whole world. They were a team, a well-oiled machine of love and mutual support. This particular Sunday morning, the scent of sizzling bacon and brewing coffee filled their kitchen. Sunlight streamed through the bay window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. Susan stood at the stove, flipping pancakes, humming along to a classic rock station playing softly on the radio. Mia sat at the wooden breakfast table, scrolling through her phone, a half-smile on her face. "So, are you excited about the spring carnival in town?" Susan asked, placing a perfectly golden stack of pancakes on a plate for Mia. "Mark said he might be able to get us a couple of those impossible-to-win prizes from the ring toss." Mia looked up, her blue eyes sparkling. "Yeah, I am. He's really good at that stuff, isn't he? It's kind of ridiculous." Susan's smile widened. "He is. It's one of his many charming qualities." She poured a generous amount of maple syrup over her own pancakes and sat down. "He makes you happy, Mom. I can tell. Really happy." The words were simple, but they meant the world to Susan. For years, Mia had seen her mother navigate the lonely waters of single life, the awkward first dates, the quiet evenings alone. The arrival of Mark 6 months ago had changed everything. He wasn't just a new person in their lives. He was a source of light, a gentle force that had filled the empty spaces in their home and in Susan's heart. Mark was everything Susan had believed she would never find again. A successful architect, with a kind face and a laugh that was both deep and genuine. He was respectful, funny, and treated both Susan and Mia with equal warmth. He was perfect, almost too perfect. The following Friday evening was a testament to their newfound family harmony. Mark arrived at the door, holding a bouquet of wildflowers for Susan and a box of gourmet cupcakes for Mia, a small but thoughtful tradition. "The best baker in town," he announced with a playful wink. "Mark, you didn't have to," Susan said, her cheeks flushing as she accepted the flowers. Mia, already tearing open the cupcake box, chimed in, "Actually, he did. These are a special kind of magical." They ate dinner together in the dining room, a rare event for a typical Friday. The conversation flowed easily, from Mark's latest project to Mia's school life and summer plans. Mark listened to Mia intently, asking questions about her art classes and her hopes for college, making her feel seen and valued, not just as Susan's daughter, but as her own person. "Mia was telling me you're a big fan of old B-movies," Mark said, turning to Mia. "I'm a connoisseur myself. I've got a killer collection of sci-fi flicks from the 50s. We should have a marathon sometime." Mia's face lit up. "Seriously? That would be awesome. Mom just rolls her eyes every time I mention them." "Hey!" Susan laughed, playfully swatting at Mark's arm. "I'm a person of refined tastes, unlike you two hooligans." As the evening wound down, Susan watched them from the kitchen doing the dishes. Mark and Mia were in the living room, laughing as they tried to explain the plot of a particularly bad horror movie. In that moment, a feeling of pure contentment washed over her. Her house felt full. Her heart felt full. After all the struggles, the long nights, the hard work, she had finally found it. A new beginning, a complete family. She looked at Mark, saw the easy, natural way he interacted with her daughter, and she felt certain this was right. This was meant to be. This perfect little world they had built was unbreakable, or so she believed. The new family friend. A month passed, and the rhythm of life in Susan's house had a new, steady beat. Mark was no longer just Susan's boyfriend. He was a fixture. His car was a familiar sight in the driveway on weekends, his laugh an expected sound echoing through the halls. He had seamlessly integrated himself into their world, and for Susan, it was a dream she never knew she had. She was no longer just a mother. She was a woman in love, sharing her life with a man who seemed to adore her, and just as importantly, her daughter. Mia, too, had settled into this new dynamic. Her initial apprehension had dissolved into genuine affection for Mark. He was different from her friends' dads or her own father, who lived states away and was a distant memory. Mark didn't try to be a replacement. He was simply a new presence, a source of easy conversation and shared interests. One Saturday afternoon, a torrential rainstorm hit. A classic New England deluge that turned the sky grey and trapped them all indoors. Susan had an unexpected work call that dragged on for hours, leaving Mark and Mia to fend for themselves. This was one of the first times they were alone for an extended period, a small, seemingly insignificant moment that would soon become a pivotal memory. They were in the living room. Mia was sketching in her notebook, sprawled on the floor, while Mark was attempting to fix the Wi-Fi router, a task that proved more difficult than anticipated. "This thing is a complete nightmare," Mark said, sighing in frustration as he fiddled with a tangle of wires. "I think the signal is out in half the house." Mia looked up from her drawing. "Yeah, it does that when it rains hard. I usually just give up and go old school. Got a great collection of comic books in my room if you're bored." Mark laughed, pushing his glasses up the bridge of his nose. "A man of many talents, but apparently fixing Wi-Fi isn't one of them. You know, I used to read those all the time. My dad had this huge box of them in the attic." He gave up on the router and sat on the couch, rubbing his temples. "I'm going to need a strong coffee after this." "I can make some," Mia offered, already getting up. "My mom's not a fan of my coffee-making skills, but I promise it's strong." As Mia moved into the kitchen, Mark followed, leaning against the counter as she expertly measured the grounds. The comfortable silence between them was punctuated by the rhythmic drumming of rain against the window pane. "You know," Mia said without looking up, "my mom hasn't been this happy in a long time. It's really nice." Mark smiled softly. "She's an incredible woman. I'm a very lucky guy." Their conversation was simple, innocent, and entirely focused on Susan. Yet, in the quiet of that afternoon, a subtle shift occurred. They weren't just Susan's boyfriend and daughter anymore. They were two people finding a natural, easy rapport. A few days later, Mark saw a post from Mia on her social media, a photo of a stunning cityscape drawing she had done. He sent her a private message, complimenting her talent and asking for a recommendation for a good local coffee shop. The interaction was brief and seemingly harmless, a simple exchange between a man and a teenager he genuinely admired. But these small moments added up. A shared joke over the dinner table that only they understood, a knowing glance when Susan said something funny or a little out of touch. Mark would often stay late after Susan had gone to bed, helping Mia with a complex geometry problem or just chatting about her future, giving her advice with the wisdom of a man who had seen more of the world. He was a mentor, a big brother, a friend, a new family friend. It was all so innocent on the surface. The easy camaraderie, the comfortable silence, the shared interests. What Susan saw was a beautiful connection between two of the people she loved most. She was thrilled that Mia had found a new, positive male role model. She never once considered that in the close, intimate space of their home, where emotions and loyalties were so tightly woven, a harmless connection could be the first unraveling thread. The secret connection. The seeds of an emotional connection, once planted in the shared quiet of a rainy afternoon, began to sprout in the weeks that followed. What had started as simple, friendly interactions between Mark and Mia evolved into something more substantial, something that felt uniquely theirs. Their common ground wasn't just old movies and bad Wi-Fi. It was a shared passion for art and architecture, a creative language they spoke fluently while Susan watched from the sidelines, blissfully unaware of the subtle shift. Mia's art was her escape, her world of color and form. She spent hours in her small studio, a converted attic space, losing herself in canvases and charcoal sketches. Mark, as an architect, saw the world through a similar lens, one of lines, light, and structure. He often stayed late after Susan had gone to bed, supposedly working on his designs at the dining room table, but more often he would find his way upstairs to Mia's studio. One Tuesday evening, Susan went to bed early, exhausted after a long day at work. Mark, with his laptop closed and a quiet smile on his face, made his way up the stairs. The attic was a sanctuary of creativity, smelling of turpentine and possibility. Mia was hunched over a large canvas, painting a vibrant cityscape at night, a composition of sharp angles and soft, glowing streetlights. "That's incredible, Mia," Mark said, his voice soft. "The way you've captured the light, it's almost alive." Mia jumped, not having heard him come in. "Oh, hey! I didn't know you were still up. I saw the light on. I couldn't resist. You know, that skyline. It reminds me of a building I designed once in Chicago. I spent a year just studying how the light would hit the glass at different times of day." Mia's eyes lit up. "That's exactly what I was trying to do here. Capturing that little piece of magic when the day is done, but the night hasn't fully taken over." For the next hour, they didn't speak about Susan, or school, or Mark's work in general. They spoke about art. Mark talked about the mathematical precision and emotional impact of architectural design, and Mia shared her thoughts on color theory and the storytelling power of a single brushstroke. It was a private world, a two-person conversation that Susan could never be a part of. The connection was intellectual and creative, but it was also deeply personal, a bond forged in shared passion. Their late-night sessions became a quiet ritual. Mark would bring up a recent design project, showing Mia his blueprints on his laptop, asking for her opinion on aesthetics. Mia would show him her latest paintings, seeking his critique on perspective and composition. Susan saw none of this. She only saw a kind man taking a genuine interest in her daughter's passion, and she felt a deep sense of gratitude. "You know, I'm so glad you two get along so well," Susan said to Mark one morning over coffee. "I was always worried Mia would be resistant to me dating again, but you two are like two peas in a pod." Mark smiled warmly, a perfect, reassuring smile. "She's a fascinating person, Susan, a brilliant artist. It's an honor to be able to talk to her about something she loves so much." His words were truthful, and they were a balm to Susan's heart. She saw Mark's mentorship as a gift. What she failed to see was the intimacy of these exchanges, the subtle boundary being erased with every shared secret and every late-night conversation. The emotional affair was beginning, not in a blaze of passion, but in the quiet, gentle sharing of two souls who found a deeper understanding in each other than they did with anyone else. The foundation of the home they were building was silently shifting, the walls of loyalty and trust beginning to crack under the weight of this secret connection. The forbidden gaze. The late-night conversations in the attic became more than just a shared hobby. They were an escape. In that small, sacred space, the generational gap between Mia and Mark dissolved, replaced by a deep, unspoken understanding. But with that intimacy came a dangerous shift. The intellectual bond had a new, undeniable layer, a silent, simmering attraction that began to color every interaction. The lines they had so carefully drawn were starting to blur, not by intention, but by the relentless pull of emotions they both tried to ignore. It was a chilly Saturday morning in November. The air was crisp and the sky was a washed-out grey. The three of them were in the garage, a disorganized space filled with gardening tools and forgotten boxes, preparing for a yard sale Susan was organizing. Susan was pulling out old clothes and kitchenware, while Mark and Mia were tasked with sorting through a dusty box of old vinyl records. "Oh my gosh, you have the original pressing of this album?" Mia exclaimed, her voice filled with excitement as she pulled a record from the box. "My mum has no idea what a treasure this is," Mark chuckled, looking at the album cover. "I bought that on a whim when I was about your age. It was a good investment." He reached for the record, their fingers brushing as he took it from her. The touch was fleeting, an accident, but it was electric. Mia's hand lingered against his for a fraction of a second too long. In that moment, the garage felt impossibly small, the air thick with an unspoken energy. They both looked up, their eyes meeting, and for the first time, the truth was laid bare. It wasn't just admiration or friendship they felt. It was something more complex, more dangerous. A jolt of recognition passed between them, a recognition of mutual, undeniable attraction. Mia's breath hitched. A rush of emotions, a confusing cocktail of guilt and a thrilling excitement surged through her. She quickly pulled her hand back, her cheeks burning. Mark, too, looked away, his jaw tightening. Susan, completely oblivious, called out from across the garage, "Mark, honey, can you help me with this?" Her voice broke the tension, a lifeline that pulled them both back from the precipice. They went back to sorting records, but the easy camaraderie was gone. Every glance was now loaded with meaning. Every word was carefully chosen. The innocent friendship they had built was now tainted, overshadowed by the weight of that single accidental touch and the shared knowledge it had revealed. Later that afternoon, after Susan had left to run an errand, Mark and Mia found themselves alone again. The silence was deafening, filled with the echo of that moment in the garage. Mia was sitting on the couch pretending to read, while Mark paced the living room, a storm of conflicted thoughts behind his composed exterior. Finally, he stopped and looked at her, his voice low and serious. "Mia, about what happened earlier?" It was nothing," she said, cutting him off, her voice barely a whisper. "Just an accident, don't worry about it." But the look in her eyes told a different story. It was a look of fear, of longing, of a young woman grappling with a forbidden desire. Mark saw it, and a part of him, the part that was a decent man in love with her mother, screamed to walk away. But another, more dangerous part was drawn to it, to her. "It wasn't nothing," Mark said, taking a step closer. "And we both know it." In that moment, the last shreds of denial fell away. The line between friend and something more had been crossed, not with a physical act, but with a silent acknowledgement. The intellectual bond they had shared was now irreversibly tangled with a powerful romantic undercurrent. A dangerous game had begun, a silent battle between guilt and desire. And as the day drew to a close, they both went to their separate rooms, haunted by the memory of a fleeting touch and a forbidden gaze that promised to change everything. The first secret, the unspoken moment in the garage, had opened a door they both knew should have remained locked. Guilt and excitement warred within Mia and Mark, creating a suffocating tension in the once harmonious home. The easy laughter was replaced by stilted conversations, the comfortable silences by a heavy, nervous quiet. Susan, lost in her own world of happiness, saw none of it, attributing their sudden moodiness to pre-holiday stress or typical teenage angst. But beneath the surface, a dangerous game was being played. The first physical betrayal happened on a Friday afternoon. Susan was out of town for a weekend conference, leaving Mia and Mark in charge of the house. The house, usually a place of refuge and love, now felt like a stage for a forbidden drama. Mark had offered to help Mia with a school project, a model of an architectural marvel. It was a flimsy excuse, a transparent reason to be alone together. They were in Mia's studio, surrounded by blueprints and cardboard cutouts. The air was thick with the weight of unsaid things. Mia was carefully gluing a tiny window onto her model when Mark moved closer to point out a structural detail. Their hands brushed again, but this time it was not an accident. Mark's fingers lingered on hers. Mia didn't pull away. She slowly looked up from her work, her eyes meeting his. The fear was still there, but it was eclipsed by a burning curiosity, a reckless desire. "Mia!" Mark's voice was a low whisper, a sound that seemed to fill the entire room. He didn't need to say anything else. The question was in his eyes, and the answer was in hers. He leaned in, closing the small distance between them. The kiss was hesitant at first, a gentle, uncertain touch of lips. But as Mia responded, the kiss deepened, a stolen moment of passion that tasted of betrayal and adrenaline. It was a quick, searing moment that felt like both a beginning and a devastating end. They broke apart, breathless. For a moment, neither of them could speak. The silence was deafening, filled with the echo of their secret. The guilt was immediate, a cold wave washing over the heat of the moment. They had crossed a line they could never uncross. Mark looked horrified, his face a mask of regret. Mia felt a sick knot in her stomach, the shame of what she had done to her mother overwhelming her. This can't happen," Mark said, his voice strained. "Mia, your mum, Susan." Mia nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I know." And just like that, the first secret was born. It wasn't just a kiss, it was a pact, a shared truth that would bind them together in deceit. From that moment on, the story was no longer about a mother, a daughter, and a boyfriend. It was about two conspirators hiding a devastating truth from the one person they were meant to protect. The rest of the weekend was a charade. They avoided eye contact, their conversations brief and superficial. When Susan called to check in, they both put on a performance of normalcy. "Everything's great, Mom. We're just relaxing," Mia lied, the words feeling like ash in her mouth. Mark's demeanor shifted from a warm, doting partner to an emotionally distant figure. He was in a constant state of internal conflict, his charm replaced by a heavy cloud of guilt. Mia, too, became withdrawn, her vibrant energy replaced by a quiet pensiveness. She found herself checking her phone constantly, a dangerous habit that grew from a single text message Mark sent late that night, a single cryptic phrase, "We have to forget this ever happened." But a text is never truly forgotten. It's a digital scar, a permanent record of a moment meant to be erased. The secret didn't stay in the attic. It followed them into the living room, poisoned the dinners they ate together, and lingered in the silence between them. Every time Susan hugged Mark, Mia felt a pang of shame. Every time Susan spoke about her future with Mark, Mia felt the weight of her deceit crushing her. The betrayal was no longer just an act, it was a way of life. The perfect beginning had ended, and in its place was a carefully constructed lie that was destined to collapse. And when it did, it would take everything down with it. The weight of guilt, the stolen kiss in the attic, was not a one-time mistake. It was a door to a new reality, one built on lies and hushed conversations. The shame and excitement that had once been a thrilling cocktail had curdled into a heavy, bitter brew of guilt. Mark and Mia's secret relationship became a suffocating burden, a shadow that followed them through the house, contaminating every shared meal and every family movie night. They found themselves living a double life, exchanging knowing glances and secret text messages when Susan wasn't looking. Their every move a careful choreography of deceit. The tension in the house was a palpable thing. It hung in the air like a thick fog. Mark, once a source of light and laughter, became withdrawn, his smile a strained facade. He was restless, constantly checking his phone and avoiding being alone with Susan for too long. Mia, who used to be a beacon of youthful energy, was now quiet and pensive. She was either glued to her phone, waiting for a text from Mark, or completely detached, lost in a world of her own making. The vibrant rhythm of their home had been replaced by a jarring, off-key silence. Susan, a woman of deep intuition, was the first to notice the change. She wasn't naive, just in love. Her happiness had blinded her, but now a flicker of doubt began to prick at the edges of her perfect world. She started to pay attention to the subtle shifts, the way Mia and Mark would stop talking the moment she walked into a room, the way they avoided eye contact at the dinner table, the way Mark's phone would buzz late at night and he would quickly silence it and go to another room. One Friday evening, the three of them were in the living room. Susan was trying to watch a movie, but her attention was elsewhere. Mark was on the couch, his phone in his hand under a pillow. Mia was scrolling through her own phone, a small, guilty smile on her face. "Everything okay, honey?" Susan asked Mark softly, a crease forming between her brows. Mark's head snapped up. "Yeah, fine. Just a difficult week at work, that's all." His answer was clipped, evasive. Susan's gaze then shifted to Mia. "And you, sweetie? You've been so quiet lately. Is something going on with your friends?" Mia's face paled. "No, Mom. Everything's fine." She immediately put her phone down, her hands shaking slightly. The lies were small, but they were building. The house was no longer a sanctuary. It was a trap. Mark and Mia found themselves meeting in secret, seeking moments of quiet intimacy away from Susan's loving but increasingly watchful eyes. They would invent excuses. Mia needed help with a project late at night. Mark had to run to the store, and Mia would, coincidentally, need to get some fresh air. Their stolen moments were filled with a desperate, hurried passion, but also with an overwhelming sense of wrongness. The thrill was gone, replaced by the bitter taste of betrayal. Their conversations, once filled with shared passions and dreams, were now dominated by discussions of their secret. "We can't keep doing this," Mia whispered to Mark one night as they sat in his car, parked on a dark, isolated street. "I feel so sick all the time, lying to her. It's killing me." Mark's face was etched with exhaustion and guilt. "I know, it's an impossible situation. I never wanted to hurt her. I love her, Mia, I do. But Kika, I'm also here with you." This was their new reality. A paradox of love and lies, an impossible tangle of emotions. Susan, meanwhile, continued to piece together the fragments of their strange behavior. She found herself lying in bed at night, replaying their stilted conversations in her head, searching for clues. A misplaced glance, a forgotten phone on the counter, a hushed voice from another room. She told herself it was nothing, that she was just being paranoid. But a mother's intuition is a powerful thing, and the pieces of the puzzle were starting to form a terrifying picture. The harmonious family she had so lovingly built was crumbling around her, and she was starting to hear the cracks. She was on the edge of a discovery that would shatter her world completely. The perfect beginning was long gone, and the devastating end was drawing near. The truth becomes a fight. A mother's intuition is a powerful, dangerous thing. It can be a gentle whisper of concern or a violent scream of alarm. For weeks, Susan had heard the whispers, but she had dismissed them as paranoia. Now, on a crisp Tuesday morning, the scream began. The family's carefully constructed house of cards, built on a foundation of lies and secrets, was about to come crashing down. The truth, in all its devastating ugliness, was about to reveal itself. Susan was making coffee, a quiet ritual she cherished. Mark had already left for work, and Mia was upstairs getting ready for school. The silence was broken by the familiar buzz of a text message coming from Mia's phone, which she had left on the kitchen counter. Usually, Susan would have ignored it, but something was different today. A feeling of dread had settled in her stomach, a cold certainty that she had to look. She picked up the phone, her hands trembling, and saw the text message notification on the lock screen. The text was from a contact named Mark. The message read, "I miss you already. That was a mistake, but I don't regret it. Be careful today." Susan's world stopped. The words were a physical blow, a punch to the gut that stole her breath. She reread the message, her mind refusing to process the meaning. No, it must be a different Mark. A friend, a classmate. But the profile picture was unmistakable. Mark's face, his warm smile, now a grotesque mockery. The words, so intimate and so damning, could only mean one thing. The whispers of doubt she had felt for weeks were not paranoia. They were the truth. Her daughter and the man she loved were having a secret affair. Her mind reeled. The stolen moments, the hushed conversations, the late nights. It all clicked into place with horrifying clarity. The beautiful connection she had celebrated was a lie, a betrayal so deep it felt like her heart was being ripped from her chest. Tears of betrayal and rage streamed down her face. She slammed the phone onto the counter, the sound echoing through the silent house. That evening, the three of them sat down for dinner. The table, once a place of family togetherness, felt like a battlefield. Susan was silent, her eyes dark with a pain they had never held before. Mia and Mark, oblivious to the storm that was about to break, exchanged a nervous glance, their secret keeping them on edge. Susan took a shaky breath, her voice dangerously calm. "Mia, did you forget your phone on the counter this morning?" Mia froze, her fork halfway to her mouth. Yeah, I think so." "Why?" Susan pushed her plate away, her eyes moving from Mia to Mark, her gaze cutting them both like a knife. "Because I saw a text from Mark on your phone. A text where he said he missed you and that what happened was a mistake, but he didn't regret it." The silence that followed was a physical entity, heavy and suffocating. Mia's face drained of all color, her hands shaking uncontrollably. Mark's composed facade shattered, his jaw going slack in shock. The truth was out. The secret they had so carefully guarded was now a gaping wound in the center of their home. "Mom, I can explain," Mia stammered, her voice a terrified whisper. Susan's voice rose, a mix of heartbreak and fury. "Explain what, Mia? Explain how you could do this to me, to us? I loved him. He was a good man, and I trusted him." She turned her full fury on Mark, her eyes burning with rage. "And you're a monster. I brought you into my home, into my life, and this is how you repay me, by taking advantage of my daughter." Mark stood up, his face pale with guilt. "Susan, please listen to me. It's not what you think. Don't you dare lie to me again," she screamed, the sound echoing through the house. "I saw the text. I saw the messages. This has been going on for weeks, hasn't it? While you were here, eating my food, sitting in my living room, sleeping in my bed, you were betraying me with my own daughter." The accusations flew like daggers, tearing the family apart piece by piece. Mia, overcome with shame, buried her face in her hands, her sobs racking her body. Mark stood frozen, unable to find the words to defend the indefensible. The trust, the love, the happy memories, it all turned to ash in a single, devastating moment. The perfect family they had all pretended to be was gone, replaced by three broken people in a shattered home, a fight that would forever mark the end of their lives together. The silence of the empty house. The fight didn't last forever, but its echo would linger for an eternity. The truth, once a secret, was now a destructive force that had torn their lives apart. After the screaming, the accusations, and the desperate failed attempts at explanation, a deafening silence fell over the house. The storm had passed, leaving behind a landscape of ruin and three broken souls. The perfect family that Susan had so lovingly built was gone, replaced by a ghost of what they once were. Susan stood in the living room, her body shaking, watching as Mark, his face a mask of shame and defeat, gathered his things. He moved through the house like a stranger, collecting a few belongings from the bedroom, a jacket from the coat rack, a book he had been reading. He didn't speak. There was nothing left to say. His silence was an admission of guilt, a final, painful acknowledgement of the betrayal. Mia, her face stained with tears, watched from the top of the stairs, her presence a silent testament to the devastation. She wanted to run to her mother, to beg for forgiveness, but the look in Susan's eyes, a cold, hollow stare that held no warmth, told her that no apology would ever be enough. The woman who had been her best friend, her confidant, was now a stranger. Mark stopped at the front door, his hand on the knob. He turned to Susan, his voice a low, pained whisper. "Susan, I'm so sorry for everything." Susan didn't reply. She simply stared at him, her silence a more powerful rebuke than any words could be. The love she had felt for him was gone, replaced by a deep, unforgiving rage. She watched him walk out the door, heard the click of the lock, and felt an emptiness in her chest that was more profound than any she had ever known. The house, once a beacon of warmth and laughter, was now a hollow shell. The next day, the silence was a living, breathing thing. It settled into the corners of the rooms, draped over the furniture, and clung to the very air they breathed. The scent of coffee and bacon, once a comforting part of their morning ritual, was replaced by the stale, metallic smell of heartache. Susan moved through her day like a zombie, her actions mechanical. She went to work, she came home, she made dinner for one. She didn't have the heart to clean up the shattered remnants of the previous night's dinner. The plates, still on the table, served as a grim monument to the family that had died there. She avoided Mia, couldn't bear to look at her. The sight of her own daughter was a constant, painful reminder of the betrayal. The trust she had placed in both of them was gone, and with it, a piece of her soul. Mia, too, was a ghost in her own home. She spent her days in her room, the door locked, the silence her only company. Her vibrant energy was gone, replaced by a numbing guilt. She tried to reach out to talk to her mother, but every attempt was met with a cold shoulder and a look of contempt. The woman who had once been her anchor was now a distant, unapproachable figure. A week passed. The silence in the house grew heavier, a crushing weight that suffocated them both. Susan would sometimes hear Mia's soft sobs from her room late at night, and a part of her, the mother who had loved her fiercely, wanted to comfort her. But the other part, the woman who had been betrayed, couldn't bring herself to do it. The pain was too raw, the betrayal too deep. The home was no longer a sanctuary, it was a prison of their own making. The empty chair at the dinner table, the quiet of the living room, the absence of Mark's booming laugh, all served as a constant, painful reminder of what they had lost. The perfect beginning was a distant memory, replaced by the grim reality of a family shattered, their lives a landscape of sadness and silence. The love that had once been a fortress had been breached from within, and there was no rebuilding it. Only the painful, slow process of moving on, alone in the wreckage. The lasting consequences. Time, they say, is a great healer. But for some wounds, it simply acts as a bandage, covering the scar, but never truly erasing the memory of the cut. 6 months had passed since the night the truth shattered Susan's home. The silence that had once filled her house was now a constant, a permanent fixture of her new reality. The echoes of the past were gone, replaced by the grim, enduring consequences of a moment of weakness and betrayal. Susan's life had become a series of routines, a quiet, solitary existence. She had sold the house in the suburbs, a place filled with too many memories, and moved into a smaller condo in a bustling part of the city. The new place was modern, sterile, and mercifully free of ghosts. She threw herself into her work, putting in long hours at the office, using productivity as a shield against her pain. Her friends tried to reach out, to invite her to dinner or coffee, but she always politely declined. The betrayal had left her with a deep-seated distrust, a feeling that no one could truly be trusted. She was alone, not by choice, but by circumstance, learning to navigate a world that felt emptier without the love she had once shared. Mia was also living in a different reality. The guilt of her actions had become a heavy cloak she wore every day. She was living with a friend and working a part-time job. Her dreams of college deferred, her ambition dimmed. Her relationship with Mark, the one they had chosen over family, had not been the fairy tale she might have once imagined. The affair that had started in a stolen kiss was now a relationship built on the foundation of a shattered home. The weight of their secret, now public, was a constant presence between them. Mia and Mark were together, but their love was a fragile, tainted thing. Their conversations were often shadowed by the unsaid. They never spoke of Susan, of the pain they had caused. The memory of that night, the screaming, the tears, hung over them like a dark cloud. Their passion, once a thrill, was now tinged with the bitter taste of regret. Mark, too, was a different man. The charming, confident architect was now haunted by his actions. The success he once enjoyed felt hollow, a poor substitute for the love and respect he had lost. One afternoon, Mia sat in a coffee shop, staring at her reflection in the window. A text message from Mark was on her phone. "Thinking of you. I'll pick you up at 6. The words were loving, but they didn't bring her joy. They only brought her a fresh wave of guilt. She thought of her mother, of the woman who had sacrificed so much for her. She knew Susan was hurting, alone, and it was her fault. The love she had for Mark was now inextricably linked with the heartbreak she had caused her mother, and the two emotions were in a constant, painful battle. Meanwhile, Susan was in her own quiet apartment, watering a small potted plant on her windowsill. It was a new plant, a symbol of a new beginning, but she couldn't shake the feeling of the past. She saw a mother with a daughter laughing on the street, and a pang of deep, aching sadness hit her. She had a daughter, but she had lost her. The family she had cherished so much was gone, and she was left with the wreckage. The betrayal had not only ended her relationship with Mark and destroyed her bond with Mia, it had also robbed her of her ability to trust and to love. She was no longer just Susan. She was a woman marked by an unforgivable betrayal. The memory was a constant companion, a ghost that lived in the corners of her mind, a reminder of the night her perfect world was shattered. The consequences of that secret were not just a moment in time. They were a lasting legacy of pain and solitude for everyone involved. The bittersweet epilogue. A year and a half had passed, and the world had continued to spin. The pain of betrayal had dulled, but the scars remained, etched into the hearts of Susan, Mia, and Mark. The once perfect family was now a collection of individuals, each navigating their own solitary path. Mark and Mia's relationship, a tumultuous union born of deceit, had finally succumbed to the weight of its own creation. The guilt, the constant fighting, and the memory of Susan's heartbreak proved to be a burden too heavy to bear. They had parted ways, leaving them both alone with their regrets. Susan, now in her quiet condo, was slowly starting to find herself again. She had started a new hobby, painting, and found a quiet sense of peace in the solitary act of creating art. One afternoon, her phone rang with a number she hadn't seen in over a year. It was Mia. For a moment, Susan hesitated, her finger hovering over the screen, the memories of the betrayal flooding back. But a part of her, the mother who had loved her daughter fiercely, couldn't ignore the call. She answered. "Mom!" Mia's voice was a soft, trembling whisper. "It's me." A long silence stretched between them, filled with a year and a half of unsaid words. "Mia," Susan finally said, her voice surprisingly steady. "How are you?" I'm okay. I'm not with Mark anymore. It ended a while ago. I'm living on my own now, working at a gallery. It's a new start," Mia explained, her voice catching. "I'm calling because I miss you, Mom, and I'm so sorry for everything." The apology was simple, but it was sincere. Susan felt a well of emotion rising in her, a mix of old pain and a new, fragile hope. She didn't respond immediately, letting the weight of the moment sink in. "I can't tell you how many times I've replayed that night in my head," Susan finally said, her voice filled with a quiet sadness. "I loved him, Mia. I really did. But what you two did, it didn't just break my heart. It made me lose faith in everything." "I know," Mia whispered, tears audible in her voice. "And I hate myself for it every single day. I was so selfish, I was so young and stupid, and I didn't think. I just wanted him, and I didn't think about what that would cost you." "Did you love him?" Susan asked, the question heavy with a year and a half of unanswered curiosity. I don't know," Mia said honestly. "I think I loved the attention. I loved feeling like a grown-up, like I had a secret, but it was never real. It was just a lie we lived with, and it tore us apart, just like it tore you and me apart. Susan took a deep breath, the conversation a painful but necessary cleansing. I'm not going to pretend that things can go back to the way they were. They can't. That house, that family, it's all gone. But she hesitated, a single tear rolling down her cheek. I am your mother, and I miss you too. That was it. There was no grand reunion, no tearful embrace. Just two broken people, a mother and a daughter, reaching out across the chasm of their past, seeking a small, fragile piece of reconciliation. They agreed to meet for coffee the following week, a small, tentative step towards an uncertain future. The story was not one of a happy ending. It was a testament to the fact that some wounds never fully heal, that some betrayals leave permanent scars. The family that had been so full of love and laughter was gone forever, destroyed by a selfish choice. But in that small, hopeful conversation, a new story began. One not of a mother and daughter who were inseparable, but of a mother and daughter who were trying, tentatively, to find their way back to each other. The epilogue wasn't a fairy tale. It was a bittersweet reflection on forgiveness and a difficult, hard-earned hope for a future that would never be perfect, but could perhaps one day be whole again.